My next guest has been involved in the community here in Anacostia in Washington, D.C. in several projects and has several upcoming that struck me as extremely interesting. When I asked producer Troy for more details, as soon as I saw something about wrapping a building in saris, I thought, I've heard enough. That's cool. I want her on. Monica Jahan Bose is an artist. She is an activist and an attorney, perhaps in that order of importance. We can ask her. She has lived in a number of countries, including, of course, this one. She is also a person who has studied a number of disciplines, including primarily art and law. And she has a project called what's it called again? Storytelling with Saris, is that it?
It's called Rapture, Storytelling with Saris.
Okay, Rapture, that's W-R-A-P-T-U-R-E, Storytelling with Saris, and it's all very interesting to me. So without further ado, Monica, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So as soon as, we'll get to the part about wrapping buildings in saris, because I thought that was really awesome, frankly. But before we get to that, so tell me a little bit about the project, what it means, how it came to be, anything you want to tell us as an opener.
So the project is a public art project, and it's connecting the community of Anacostia and also the greater community of Washington, D.C. with my ancestral village in Bangladesh, which is called Katakali Village. It's on the island of Borobaishtia in the Indian Ocean or Bay of Bengal. And the idea is to have this kind of trans-border solidarity on the issue of climate change and the environment. It's a feminist project. It's focusing on women, men, and other allies are also welcome to take part. But the idea is to share each other's concerns about climate change and take some small steps as individuals to try to cool down our planet. And having people, we work on these saris together. So we're making about 60 saris together, the people of Anacostia and DC and also the people of Katakali Village. And we stand around a table and make the saris together, and we do woodblock printing, we do painting, we talk about climate change and our fears and our hopes. And then I ask everyone to think about what we can do as individuals to reduce our use of energy, of fossil fuel energy, and people actually make pledges on the saris. And the pledges are sort of, they're commitments, but they're also communications between these two communities.
Now, as most of our listeners will know, but I just want to make clear, so the sari, of course, is a traditional woman's piece of clothing in South Asia and that part of the world. And now I've been to India, I've never been to Bangladesh, but in my experience, women bought saris, bought the cloth for the saris and, wrapped it and so on. But is the making of saris, the print making, the coloring of them, the decoration of them, is that a folk art form or a public art form in some parts of that region?
Yes, it is. That's a very good question. The saris that I'm using, saris are typically 18 feet long, or 6 meters, 6 yards, and the ones that I'm using are hand woven in Bangladesh. And then the decoration or printing of a sari or embroidery of a sari, these are actually very important traditional art forms. And in Bangladesh and in India, all over South Asia. And the woodblock printing of fabric is centuries old, maybe more than that. I don't know how old it is, and it's a tradition that was, I think, typically done by men, actually, but the women of my village have learned to do it fairly recently. They actually engaged in a workshop to learn the skill. But also embroidery of saris, and drawing and embroidering on saris is also, it's a women's skill, and this is something, a women's craft or art. This also goes back a really, really long way. And the main, actually, artistic outlet for women in Bangladesh in the visual arts, I would say, has always been fabric embroidery, drawing on it first and then embroidering. And my grandmother used to do it also. And it's also interesting, we also, in Bangladesh, we also recycle saris in this process. So old saris are never thrown away. They actually are saved, and then several of them are layered together and then embroidered to create a new art form, which is called katha. So anyway, that's another.
And if you look at the saris in that part of the world, the embroidery is sometimes really beautiful,
Yes.
really exquisite. So in a sense, when you say this is a feminist project, is it a feminist project in one of the senses in which it's a feminist project is perhaps because it's the reclaiming of a woman's art form in a new context? Is that, is that close? Or?
I think that is close. I think that, you know, working on fabric and women's artistic expression hasn't really been valued, especially it's been considered a lower form of art, and it hasn't really. So part of it is that, and part of it also is that the women from my ancestral village have also been denied education, and they learn to read as adults. Most of the women that are part of this project in Bangladesh. So the fact that they're reading and writing is a form of empowerment, and they're using words also in the sari. So I consider that feminist, the very act of women writing, especially in South Asia, where traditionally they have been married off at a young age and not allowed to complete as many years of education as their fellow boys. And that's changing in South Asia, for sure. In Bangladesh now, girls and boys are on parity. But among a lot of adult women in Bangladesh, there's still very low literacy. So it's feminist in that way as well, that women are taking leadership in this project. And they're actually, and I think that there's a lot of information that suggests that women bear the brunt of negative impacts of climate change. We tend to be more poor and have less political power. And in Bangladesh, women are actually the people that take care of the family, that gather the water, gather the food, do a lot of the farming, and also rebuilding after each storm. The physical labor of that falls on women. So climate change, with its more severe weather, disruption of agriculture and water, has a negative impact on women. And there's a lot of there are a lot of activists and researchers on climate that believe that women's leadership is critical to really addressing climate change as a planet. And so that's another aspect that's also part of the project.
Again, we're talking with Monica Jahan Bose about her project Rapture, storytelling with saris. So you have women making these saris in your village and decorating them. You have women here, and people are, as I understand it, as they do, they're also making a pledge on each sari that they make. Is that correct? So is it one woman? Is each sari made by an individual woman, or are they?
No.
Is it a collective?
So it's a collective. So each sari is being made by about a dozen people. So at least the ones here. And the ones in Bangladesh, sometimes it's 3 or 4 on each sari. But we've been doing the workshops here with about a dozen people. We have them signed up. And the other interesting aspect is that all the people that are helping with the saris are considered the fabricators of this project. And they're getting paid a small stipend, but they're also being paid for participating. So they're getting $15 an hour for their time working on the saris, and that's all being funded by the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. So it's everyone's helping me make these, put together this installation, and then in April and May we're going to wrap 2 buildings on Good Hope Road and 3 buildings here, this one and the next 2 on Martin Luther King. And we're going to wrap them for each one day, just put them up and enjoy them. And
so now these of course are streets right around our studio here in Washington, D.C. So you're not going to wrap all 5 simultaneously, or
we are
you? Oh,
we
okay.
Are.
Well, you're going to have to invite me down for that, because I'm going to want to see that. Now, you mentioned I'm interested in these pledges because you know, I think of a group of women in the United States, group of women in Bangladesh. There is, as we were talking about earlier, this country very disproportionately contributes to climate change, not only in a collective sense through the actions of government corporations and so on, but through the actions of each individual who works in this country. Has much, much larger climate footprint than. So what would the 2 different sets of pledges, what might the American pledges look like? What might the Bangladeshi pledges look
the pledges
like?
are being made by Westerners. They're not being made by the Bangladeshis. The Bangladeshis are talking about their experiences of climate change, you know, but they're not making pledges. So the pledges are by Americans. Yeah. So it's definitely and right. It's not really fair to the Bangladeshis. Really can't do anything about climate change. Not that much. I mean, they're also aware. We had a knowledge sharing workshop with them a couple of years ago. They're also aware that to the extent that more and more people are using motorized vehicles, that is going to contribute, but it's still a very, especially these island people.
Right.
It's off the grid. They have no cars there. They're starting to have a few motorcycles, but it's really they have solar power. They have little panels that they use for all their to charge their phones, to have a light for reading. So they really are teachers. I mean, I learned about what low carbon lifestyle is from them, and so I think they're sharing their experiences, and that gives us sort of a feeling of hope and empowerment and connection. And then the Americans are sharing what we're going to do.
So tell me what those pledges might be like. What a typical American
so there are a lot of pledges. I have a couple of saris here.
Beautiful color blue.
Yes, they're mainly in blue. We're going to cover the streets on Good Hope Road. Those two buildings are going to be in blue, and these three here are going to be in this sort of pinky purple, feminist color.
I like it.
Yeah. So the blue is the color of the ocean, obviously, and water, which is a very big part of climate change. Water, sea level rise, and all the storms, and all the ice melting, there's water, all of that. So some of the pledges I've gotten, a lot of the pledges in DC have been about biking, which I find very exciting. That I am going to bike to work, or I'm going to stop driving to work. I'm going to take my bike to the grocery store. So biking is a big part of the pledges I've been receiving. Another pledge has been to switch light bulbs, a simple one, switch regular light bulbs to LED, energy efficient. That can actually help save quite a bit of electricity and also save you money. Another one, some people have pledged to research and consider solar panels. One person who pledged that actually installed solar panels in my neighborhood. And other people have pledged things like planting trees. Trees are a carbon sink. They absorb a lot of carbon dioxide. It's a great mitigation measure for the, so things like that. Some have been very simple. Some people have pledged, some kids have been pledging that I will watch less TV and play outdoors more. That's great for the environment and for your health and your brain. So simple things like that.
A lot of these are win-wins. Kids playing outdoors is a great example, but so is planting trees, especially in an urban neighborhood. As you know, and as some of our listeners will know, there have been studies showing that air quality improves, the lifestyle, the quality of life in the neighborhood improves during hot days. There's more shade. I mean, simple things, but by helping the environment, people are helping themselves. Now, last topic before we go, we were talking a little bit before the segment began, before we started recording, that because I'm the kind of activist who goes after corporations and government and that sort of thing, I was very sensitive, for example, to stories that showed that the Don't Litter campaigns of the 1970s that were so successful were actually funded by manufacturers who wanted to distract attention from their own contribution to wastage and pollution by making people believe it was solely their own character defects. Now, on the other hand, so I always want to go after the corporations and the billionaires because that's just the way I'm hardwired, for one thing. But on the other hand, there are things we should and can do as individuals to change our consumption. And the more I think about it, the more I think that you can't have one without the other. But I want to get your thoughts. That some of the best way to get people thinking about, well, we have to go after the corporations, we have to rein in the way we're driven to consume, and advertising that drives us to consume, and the way our government is becoming increasingly indifferent to the environment. Sometimes I think the best way to do that is by getting people to think about their own individual consumption. But I'm curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I've certainly, a lot of, there's been criticism of approaches that focus on the individual and that it's not really right to focus on individual consumer or other patterns because it's also disproportionate impact on lower income people. My message is really, the thing that the U.S., this country, we do have the highest per capita, the North Americans, per person, environmental footprint. And I do think, of course, the government needs to do more. But as we've seen, our federal government has failed. It's failed for a long time, not just under the Trump administration, which now it's abysmal, but we have failed for a long time to take leadership as a country. So instead of feeling hopeless, the idea of this project is a lot of us feel hopeless, feel scared, is to take a little bit of responsibility for ourselves, feel empowered to do something on our own. And that doesn't mean letting corporations off the hook. Absolutely. We should tell the companies that we do business with to do a lot more for the environment, that they should rely on solar energy. Our Pepco and our energy suppliers, they should move toward more solar and wind and renewable energy. We should push those people, absolutely. But we should also think about how much energy we use as individuals. And certainly people that are richer, communities that are richer are more responsible. And I say that often when I talk to homeless women. I've done some workshops with homeless women. I say to them, I know that you're in transition. You don't have a big carbon footprint, but I still want us to know what it is that's happening to our planet. And I think all of us can do small things. As you say, kids can play outdoors more. That's a win-win. People can turn off the lights. The things we used to do when we were, past generations were much more cognizant of turning off the lights, from moving from one room to another. Small things. But I do think as individuals, we contribute. I contribute. I'm totally guilty. We live in homes that are big and overheated and over air conditioned, and we use too much electricity. We have to think about moving to a low carbon lifestyle. It's our only way. And of course, China is also coming up as a big greenhouse producer. But we have to remember that we buy most of our stuff from China. So we're the ones who are actually helping accelerate that process. So the U.S. is still the #1 in terms of how much energy we use. And as a Bangladeshi and an American, I feel personally responsible that my actions are contributing to the demise of my ancestral community. And so that's one of the reasons I felt inspired to sort of do something about it. And I think we can't, I think there is something really empowering about working on art together, using our hands, and then thinking about what we can do individually and as a family or as a community to be involved in the fight for our planet.
Well said, and I just have one last question for you,
yes.
Which is what happens to the Saris after they wrap a building?
Wonderful question. So after they wrap the building, they're going to be ultimately, many of them are going to be returned to Bangladesh, and the women are going to wear them there.
Great.
As garments.
Well, I hope we'll get to see photographs of
Yes, you will.
them. In fact, you brought some photographs.
Yeah, I can show a few. I have some photographs of of my drawings.
Our radio audience will not see
I can
the
describe it, though.
Visual
I can
will.
describe it, and you can always look on my website. So this is a picture of
Wow.
what the Anacostia Art Center and the building next to it, the Anacostia Business Center, will look like.
It looks really blue.
Blue. It's going to be blue. There's going to be some greenish blue saris as well. It's the water idea.
It's
and
like a People's Christo project.
It is.
Remember
It is.
Christo
Yes.
wrapping
Of
everything,
course. Of course. Because it's like a People's Crystal project, because all of these actually have people's work on them. And this is what this building, Anacostia, the We Act Radio,
I love
and
that
the next
color.
buildings will look like.
That's much more of a. Now I'm really bad with colors. I'm partially colorblind, but that's sort of a violet or
A pinky violet. Yeah.
a pinky violet. Okay, so there must be a name for it, heliotrope or something. But
I'm not really sure what to call this
But it's a cool color, and I love it.
I've had to order these colors specially for the saris because they haven't been. And you were asking about the women wearing the saris. So I've actually given a first set of saris. We did a bunch of pledge saris last year in Anacostia, and so some of the saris were actually given to the women in Bangladesh in January. So I have some photos here of the women wearing the American pledge saris. So
I love their spirit in the photographs too.
So we have some portraits of the women wearing them.
Yeah,
and then I can also just show quickly one of the saris.
And we have a sari here.
This is a sari, one of the Rapture saris. It says here Rapture. Someone wrote on it, Anacostia Rapture. This was made on 12/11/18, so December 11th. And then let's see what's on here. They're all different. This one has.
Like you, I come out of multiple religious traditions, and my evangelical Christian relatives would read the word rapture very differently than I think you probably mean.
That's right. That's right.
And so would Debbie Harry fans. But okay. Oh, look at that. Okay.
So this has the word 2 degrees centigrade written here, which was the limit agreed to in Paris by 196 countries, including this one, that we would not let global temperatures of the air overall go up more than 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels. It's already gone up 1 degree Celsius, by the way. So that's about 3.7, something like that in Fahrenheit. But we have to work a lot harder if we're going to actually meet that target.
Oh, that's for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much, Monica Jahan Bose, artist and activist and attorney. Thank you so much for this great work, and thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure.